long, long ago, in the green hills of Bethlehem, there lived a young boy named David. He wasn't a prince. He wasn't a soldier. He was a shepherd, the youngest of 8 brothers. His job was to take care of his father's sheep. Every morning, he would lead them out to find fresh grass to eat and cool water to drink. He would watch over them all day long, making sure they were safe from any danger. David loved his sheep, and he was a very good shepherd. He knew each one by name, and he would do anything to protect them. This was his whole world: the grassy fields, the fluffy sheep, and the big open sky. David spent many long hours alone in the fields, but he was never really lonely. He had his harp, a small stringed instrument, and he would play beautiful music on it. He would sing songs to God, songs about the stars and the moon, about the mighty mountains and the quiet streams. His heart was full of love for God, who had made everything. While his older brothers were learning to be strong and important, David was learning to be patient and brave. He learned to fight off wild animals, like lions and bears, that tried to snatch his father's lambs away. He wasn't big, but his heart was full of courage. No one paid much attention to the shepherd boy. When important visitors came, his father would call for his tall, handsome sons. David was usually forgotten, left out in the fields with his flock. God was looking at David's heart. And in David's heart, God saw something special. He saw a heart that was full of trust, love, and bravery. A heart that was ready for a very big adventure, bigger than any lion or bear he had ever faced. God had a secret plan, a wonderful plan for David. The shepherd boy didn't know it yet, but he was destined to become the greatest king his people had ever known. His journey was just beginning, and it would be a story filled with wonder, danger, and God's never-stopping love. One day, God spoke to an old prophet named Samuel. A prophet is someone who listens to God and shares his messages. God told Samuel, "Go to Bethlehem. I have chosen a new king from the sons of a man named Jesse." The current king, Saul, had stopped listening to God, and his heart had grown hard. So Samuel packed his things and traveled to the little town of Bethlehem. He went to Jesse's house and told him that God wanted to choose one of his sons for a special purpose. Jesse was surprised, but he called for his oldest son, a tall, strong man named Eliab. Samuel saw him and thought, "Surely this is the one." But God whispered to Samuel's heart, "Don't look at how tall and handsome he is. I have not chosen him." People look at the outside of a person, but the Lord looks at the heart. So Jesse brought his next son, and then the next, and the next. 7 sons in all stood before Samuel. They were all fine, strong young men, but with each one, God said, "No, not him." Samuel was confused. He turned to Jesse and asked, "Are these all the sons you have?" Jesse paused for a moment as if he had forgotten someone. "Well," he said, "there is still the youngest, but he is out in the fields watching the sheep." "Send for him," Samuel said. "We will not sit down to eat until he arrives." So a messenger ran out to the fields to find David. Soon the young shepherd boy came in, his cheeks rosy from the sun and his eyes bright. He probably smelled like sheep in the outdoors. He was just a boy, not a warrior or a prince. But when Samuel saw him, God spoke clearly, "This is the one. Arise and anoint him." So Samuel took a special horn filled with olive oil, a symbol of being chosen by God, and he poured it over David's head, right there in front of all his surprised brothers. From that day on, the Spirit of God was with David in a powerful new way. The secret had been shared between God, Samuel, and David. He was going to be the future king, but nothing changed on the outside. He didn't get a crown or a throne. He didn't move into a palace. After the ceremony, David went right back to his father's fields. He went back to his sheep, his harp, and his songs. But now everything was different. He had a great big secret hidden in his heart. He was God's chosen one, a king in training.
They were singing from the women, Saul had slain his thousands and David his 10,000s. And the king heard that. And the king, like so many people in a position of authority, when someone else get a little shine, the king, he got jealous or envious of the shine that David was getting because he slain Goliath. Well, let me put it this way. Saul had a chance of slaying Goliath. He was there on the battlefield before David. Many people don't understand with God that if God wants something to happen, or God wants something to be done, it's going to be done. It's not going to be done because we as people may say, well, I'm not going to do that. Okay, well, God said, that's all right. I'll raise up someone that will do it. God got a David in the wings, waiting to do what we may be reluctant to do on behalf of the Lord.
Sometime later, a big war started. A fearsome army called the Philistines came to fight King Saul's army. The two armies stood on opposite hills with a valley in between. Every morning and every evening, a giant came out of the Philistine camp. His name was Goliath. He would shout across the valley, making fun of God's people. "Choose one man to fight me," he would roar. "If he wins, we will be your slaves. But if I win, you will be our slaves." All of King Saul's soldiers, even the king himself, were terrified. No one dared to fight the giant. When David arrived, he heard the giant's terrible shouts. He saw the fear in the eyes of all the soldiers. David couldn't believe it. "Who is this man?" he asked. "Who dares to defy the armies of the living God?" David's brothers were angry with him. They told him to go back to his sheep. But David's heart was on fire. He knew that God was bigger than any giant. He went to King Saul and said, "Let no one lose heart. I will go and fight this Philistine." Saul looked at the young shepherd boy and said, "You can't. You are only a boy, and he has been a warrior since he was young." But David told the king about the lion and the bear. "The same God who rescued me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will rescue me from this giant," he said with great confidence. King Saul saw the faith in David's eyes and finally agreed. He tried to put his own heavy armor on David, but it was too big and clumsy. David took it off. "I cannot go in these," he said. "I am not used to them." Instead, he went down to the stream in the valley. He chose 5 smooth stones and put them in his shepherd's bag. With his staff in one hand and his simple sling in the other, he walked out to face the giant. Goliath laughed when he saw the boy coming toward him. "Am I a dog that you come at me with sticks?" he sneered. But David shouted back, "You come to me with a sword and a spear, but I come to you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied." Then David did something amazing. He put one of his stones into his sling, ran toward the giant, and let the stone fly. It soared through the air and hit Goliath right in the forehead. The giant stumbled and fell face down on the ground.
Saul didn't fight Goliath, but he fought David. That don't make sense. All because the song was Saul slain his thousands and David his 10,000s. Well, let me share this with you. There's somebody out there that can do what you do better than you. I don't care how good you think you do it. There's going to be somebody out there that can slay 10,000s while you only can slay the thousands. That's just the way it is. That's called life. Be thankful that God allow us to slay the thousands. Be thankful for the thousands. Don't look down the street at the man that's slaying 10,000 and say, well, I ain't doing. You don't have to do what they doing. God didn't give it to you to do that. God gave it to you to do your thousands. Too many people, they waste time because they trying to compare and compete in a place where God said you don't have to compare and compete in. I've given you to do what I've given you to do. As great as Moses was, he wasn't Noah. There's only one Noah. And there's only one Moses. And as great as Moses was, he wasn't Joshua. And as great as Joshua was, he wasn't Samuel. And as great as Samuel was, he wasn't David. And as great as David was, he wasn't Jesus. That's the way it works. That's the way it works.
He had chances to get rid of King Saul and take the throne for himself, but he refused. David knew that God had a plan and a perfect time for everything. He chose to wait for God to make him king, instead of taking matters into his own hands. Finally, after many long years of waiting, God's promise came true. King Saul died in a battle, and the people of Israel came to David and made him their king. He never forgot that he was once just a shepherd boy. He always remembered that it was God who had lifted him up, protected him, and placed him on the throne. His heart was always grateful, and he led his people to worship the one true God, who had been so faithful to him throughout his entire life.